Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Footnotes and Fairytales, the platform that hopes to showcase those people from Newry and their stories. It is a platform that looks to highlight those that are ambitious, creative, innovative, and inspiring. My guest today is a former MMA fighter. He is the founder and director of Right Fitness. He is an author. He has published a book and he has recently just achieved his black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And if all that weren't enough, he is also about to attempt a world record. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce the very driven and ambitious and talented Damien Rooney. Hi, Damien. How are you?
Hello, Shar. How's things?
Good, good. Uh, for those that know you, you're more commonly known as Damo. So, uh, myself included. So, uh,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll drop the formalities and I'll call you Demo. I want to first
100%.
look at, for anybody that does know you, they understood that you were an MMA fighter, and I mean that was a career or a profession that you were involved in for 10 years or more. I think from your first professional fight until your last. So
Yeah.
I want to understand how you were introduced to MMA. What were your first impressions of it? What was it about it in particular that you thought I would like to try this? Not even as a path to becoming a professional fighter, but just as something to do as I would play a football or somebody would play a tennis or whatever. So if you could just sort of talk me through that introduction to MMA and how you in those early days pursued it.
I suppose I started off my martial arts really at 10 years old. I picked up Taekwondo and I enjoyed martial arts right away. So I was in martial arts and combat and, one-to-one sort of competition really took to me. Like I was always big into sports. So I had always done a lot of team sports, soccer, Gaelic, basketball, water polo, and then I've done a lot of individual sports like swimming and stuff. But the one-to-one aspect of martial arts really took to me straight away. So I enjoyed that right off the bat. And but I never got uh combat wise and sport wise, I never got from Taekwondo what I was looking for. So obviously it's a conventional martial art,
Hmm.
and the competition is it's generally non to semi contact. So I enjoyed the sparring aspect, but it wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for a full contact aspect of martial arts. So as I progressed up, I'd went to university and I'd wanted to graduate, but when I was going to be when I graduated, my aim was always to try and pursue a career in martial arts. So I'd sort of searched around really where in the world I could do full contact right away. Because over here, there was full contact kickboxing shows, but you needed an element of you'd needed to been in that field for a while before you were allowed to transition to full contact. So on looking around, I came across Tiger Muay Thai in Thailand. And this was years ago before it was on the map at all. Now it's one of the largest global brands in the world, but at this
Hmm.
time it was tiny. So they had they had put up that there was an international camp that people could come from all over the world to train in Muay Thai and compete in full contact straight away. So this really inspired me to try and do that. So when I
And what age were
graduated,
you? 20?
uh, 2022,
Okay.
so I'd recently just got hip surgery, and the hip surgery was quite intrusive. I had to get my labrum. I had to get labrum surgery, which is sort of really unheard of at that young age. But it was just years and years, essentially, probably of overtraining in many different fields, sports, and different things had just deteriorated my hip so badly. But it turned out being probably the best thing to ever happen to me,
Mm.
because when I was told, I was always sort of talking about from in around the age of 16 to myself that I wanted to pursue a career in professional martial arts. And I wasn't as committed to it. I wasn't, in my own head, I was definitely not the guy I became. My commitment levels, in my head probably would have been that I was all in on it, but I wasn't really really pursuing it in that sense. So whenever I got the surgery, I was told I'd never compete again. I was told with the how extensive the surgery was going to be, there was a chance I would never compete again, and that really crushed me. That really
Yeah.
initially getting that news initially crushed me now, and I was down for quite a while about it until one day it just sort of came to me that what why are you letting people tell you what you can and can't do? And that really inspired me to get up, get after it. And 6 months after that, so I really took into a heavy rehab program. That changed my mindset completely. That was like,
Mhm.
right, okay, you this was nearly taken away from you. So now, if you're going to be serious about it, you better be serious. And that completely transformed my mindset overnight. And at that stage, then, um, 6 months or so after I got my sign off, I was able to book to go to Thailand. And once I got signed off from the surgeon, I went to Thailand and trained over there and fought my first professional fight 3.5 weeks later. And from
And did you
there,
travel on your own? Who did you travel with?
I had initially booked to go on my own, but then a friend of mine, Paddy Donnelly, he was going on to Australia. He was booked to go to Australia, and he thought, you know what, why not? I'll go to Thailand first. So he came out with me as well. So, I had booked to go on my own, and then when Paddy heard about the trip, he thought, you know what, that sounds interesting, and he then came out and trained. But initially, yeah, my plan was to go over, train on my own, and just listen, see what happens.
I mean, that's incredibly bold in and of itself. Just, you know, I'm going to Thailand. I'm going to train. Going to become a professional fighter, all by yourself. I mean,
I really at that time that was it. I was completely tunnel vision. That was all I had in my head. Like I had been offered uh I've been offered quite a lucrative job upon finishing my placement year. Uh they had asked myself and a friend of mine, Brandy, to come in and interview for positions. We were offered the jobs. With their Renta, international jobs as operations manager in some of their airports. Uh, quite a nice starting salary for a graduate. But I was never my placement year told me I was never ever going to um, fall into the system. It just wasn't for me. It didn't suit my personality. It
and
didn't suit what I wanted to do.
do
You
you think
know.
if you had taken that job, it would have altered the course of your life, or do you think you
Oh
still would have?
no, it would have completely changed it. Because realistically, it was like all in or all out, and I had to
Okay.
fully commit to. I had to fully commit to fighting. My aim was to become a professional fighter, be one of the first Irish men. Well, in my head, I was trying to be the first Irish man to make it to the worldwide stage.
Mhm.
And that was really intriguing for me. And once I started out over in Thailand, that was a big one in terms of what I had planned to do and what I wanted to do. And it really then from there, when I get the taste of full contact fighting, that was for me. That was really when I was like, right, this is what I want to do. Because I tipped around over here and obviously I'd done semi contact and, there's elements of where in training you dipped in and out of it, but it's nothing like, it's a world apart from, full contact fighting. And especially over in Thailand. Thailand was insane. You're going over at the time, like there was very few foreigners at the time would have tipped around over, and like Tiger was very, very small. There was only
Mhm.
three rings at the stage. Now it's huge, UFC athletes from all over the world are at it, but at this time it was a gym that you might have had, you know, three rings at. I remember it was so small that there were times where I was turning up at the 6:30 a.m. class and I was the only person there and getting, four trainers fighting to train you because they wanted something to do. So I was getting absolutely spoiled for knowledge straight away. And, it just really opened your eyes to just how good some of these guys are and how, so how, and like, I mean, some of the Thai fighters over there were insane, scary,
Wait,
scary.
what time was this? I mean, this is like early 2000s, or
2006,
okay.
2006, yeah, 2006 or so, yeah.
Okay, so 2006, you had your first professional fight. I guess you'd been there for a couple of weeks. That first fight, was it full contact MMA,
No,
professional?
it was Muay Thai.
Okay,
Uh,
Muay Thai.
so 3.5 weeks. Now, I'll open this with, the I was very, I would have best put this, stupid at the start, and just completely driven, but would have said yes to anything, and you know, uh, yeah, was ballsy, but at the same time ballsy, I would say naive and silly. As in, like, the on the same note, the
Yeah,
like, as in, I had zero experience in Muay Thai, none. I'd never done Muay Thai before I went to Thailand, and when I landed, I was there possibly 10 days, and a promoter had come in and asked who had wanted to fight professionally, and I was like, yeah, I'll do it. You know, uh, Very silly. Shouldn't have done it. Um, then I ended up, the guy I was supposed to fight pulled out, so I got bumped up to the main event on the night against a very experienced Australian who had fought multiple times. He held titles over in Thailand. Um, I had no idea of the rule set, never mind anything else. Very silly. Like, as as far as it went, like, I had no idea of the scoring system. I had no idea of the rounds, as in, like, round one is you come out late, and then it picks up two, three, four, and that's when you really build up into it, and how the scoring system worked, so they don't score punches as much as kicks and knees, elbows, and the so I had no idea of any of this, but thought, yeah, this is great, this is fantastic. They're going to allow me to do this, and went out in the fight, and I lost my first fight. Now, again, was it a great learning experience? Absolutely. Came out early, dropped the guy earlier on, you know, um, but the for that fight, he kicked the leg from under me and left me in a very bad way, leg wise. He cut me with several elbows, so it was that I was completely new to all of this. I was going in.
yeah.
This is essentially a kickboxing match, isn't, like, that's what we're going to do. So it was a great learning experience in that regard. Competitive fight, but he stopped me with cuts in the third round. Um, as well. It was just a completely different experience, being over there and fighting.
And how
Uh,
did you, when you came home from Thailand, how did you make that first transition into MMA as we know it now? Like,
I got a taste of it over there. So as I was training in Thailand, I really enjoyed that. But then there was an MMA aspect had just opened in Tiger. So Ray Elby had come over, and he had been taken in as the MMA coach, and he was taken into an MMA element of it. And that's when I sort of dipped my toe in there and thought, wow, this is
mhm,
brilliant. So once I did that, by the time I had left, I had fought in Thai a game before I left, fought in one there before I left, but came home and then thought, really wanted to explore the element of MMA. So when I came home, then that's when I sort of started looking around for different areas to go and train. So I went to find an MMA club up in Antrim, EFR, under Davy Patterson. Like, so, superb coach, ridiculous level of knowledge, trained so many of the top fighters in the north, and so fell in there, and I started traveling up to Antrim a couple of times a week and training up there. I found my Thai coach now, Sean, and started training Muay Thai with him. And then at that stage, Sebastian had just moved to One Point, or just moved over here, and he had opened a class on One Point in
mhm.
Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and that's when I started training with the guys there, and that's sort of how it really then transitioned to me falling into getting an MMA fight. Ultimate Conflict was only starting up at the time. Andrew Gregory and Adrian Patterson were run Ultimate Conflict, and had approached me about fighting, and I thought, oh, brilliant, not only was I getting the fight, I was getting the fight in Newry. So I was all over that. Booked a flight to go back out to Thailand to train for the first fight, trained for 6 months, and came back home and fought my first professional fight in the Sports Centre.
That was 2008. That
2008.
that first professional MMA fight. So there was no, I guess, there was no amateur development for you. You'd kind of just jumped in at the deep end, gone professional more or less straight away. How did you find that first MMA fight? Were you nervous?
Yeah, yes, well, yes, it was. Now, probably because I was at home more, but uh, probably more of a level of excitement in the first one. I only started getting more and more nervous as we progressed through,
Yeah.
and more became on the line. I found, which is strange, but first one, very excited, couldn't wait to get out. The reason why there was an amateur circuit at the time, however, in amateur MMA at that stage, there was no ground strikes.
Okay.
So I had wanted to go full on, as in, would I recommend it to people coming in now? Definitely not. Build up a great amateur record, go in, fight as many times as you can as amateur, build up your experience, build up your experience, you know, uh, build up your amount of fights and your nervous energy walking out and actually fighting in an arena that you know winning an illusion is much less important, as
Hmm.
opposed to getting the experience there at that stage. 'Cause you're building your experience. Your pro record is what is going to make or break your career moving forward. Unfortunately, just the way the setups are now. So build all your experience as an amateur and then move in is what I would recommend now. The only reason why the rule set has since changed, so there are things like ground strikes and whatever in the amateur setup,
Okay.
um, and that wasn't around back then. So that was a big difference, really.
Okay. And after that first fight, I gather you'd won that first fight.
Yes.
And what was the overwhelming feeling? Was there like incredible joy? Was there a sense of relief?
Yes, definitely joy and definitely an element of relief there, because like you have an element where this is completely new. Like no one in Newry knew what MMA was, or it was still very, you know, young all over Ireland
Mhm.
really at this stage, and it was only sort of progressing. Uh, and so because of that, it felt fantastic to go out and actually get into and get a win. Especially in there's nothing like fighting in your hometown. There isn't. Like I have fought all over and I've fought in huge arenas, but it doesn't even compare. You
Yeah, I
know,
mean that's something I've witnessed. Having followed your career and been to
it's
a
phenomenal.
lot of your fights, the support that you garnered in Yuri alone was remarkable. And that's something I wanted to touch upon. I mean, I was there in the sports center. It was sold out. It was cage contender, bantamweight title fight against Alan Philpott, I think.
Yeah.
And you won. I mean, the atmosphere when you won was unbelievable. What do you remember about that experience?
Oh, unbelievable. That was electric now. That was a really that was another fantastic night. Like I was back in Newry, back in the sports centre for the first time because it had been out of there for years. Getting to fight a very hot prospect and Alan, as in like who was really at that stage, like Alan was tipped for uh he was tipped to move on to the UFC, as in like he'd been performing really well on the circuit. And so that was a huge one for me, very motivating because a lot of people had written me off. A lot of people thought, obviously, yes, I was coming down to the end of my career. Alan was going to pass me. It was going to be a very easy win for him. So I was extremely motivated
Mhm.
um, for that fight. And I was very confident I was going to get the win. But that was a really good one for me.
Yeah, there was also another one. I remember it was in the Helix in Dublin. You fought, I think it was under the Cage Warrior banner. You fought English lad Brian Crichton.
Ryan Creighton, yeah.
You finished him, and there's obviously photographs available. There's one photograph in particular where you turn to essentially your home fans. We were all up on the top balcony, and the photograph is you turning towards us and your arm raised, and that was a remarkable experience for me watching. There was a home crowd effectively for you because there's so many people that travel to watch you fight as well. What do you remember about that win?
Oh, that was another phenomenal one. I would put the Creighton fight down as probably one of the best of my career. Uh, Again, the I was heavily written off going in. They talked about Brian for moving in to fight for the Cage Warriors flyweight world title. You know, he'd been walking through guys, uh, and at that stage, I was dropping weight because I was coming down to meet him at 130. Uh, Big power. He had a lot of submissions, guillotines on his record and stuff like that there. So that was one I was again very motivated for because of the media surrounding it, that everyone was writing me off. So went in and had as good a performance as I could hope for. As in, like, everything went to plan. And I was really, really pumped for it. And again, outside of the people who travel there, all the Irish fans in general are superb, and
Mm,
then the people who traveled all the time to support me, it was incredible. I was completely blown away by the support I would have got for all of my fights.
yeah.
And for people going so far, like coming all the way down to Dublin and staying over, whatever, to watch that. Like, you're very, very thankful and very humbled by how many people would have supported you, and the messages I would have got sort of both before and after um were incredible. So, like, it was really it really was a very humbling sort of thing to have that.
Mhm.
And but yes, that was again one of the ones that I really sort of what I had there as one of my best performances all round.
What else would have stood out for you? What other highs did you experience in that MMA career over the 10 years that you fought?
I suppose there are a lot of highs when you look at things like even when Cage Contender was in its prime, you know, and it was bringing a lot of large names over to the north, like a lot of Americans as well. Like, to be able to, when you look back at some of the events that I was lucky enough to headline,
Mhm.
and some of the huge, huge names in the sport that were on the undercard, again, it's very humbling to have experienced that, to have been there, and to be the guy who was headlining those events, especially when there were, like I say, so many huge names that have gone and went so far in the sport, and even some of them that are still top of the sport, were on those cards. So that was again another fantastic experience. It was the first time it was brought back to, say, the King's Hall,
Yeah, yeah.
the whole time we were there. So that was iconic, at its best. So that was another big experience.
I guess before I came on here, I looked at your resume, and it's impressive. The names that you fought, and I'm obviously aware of the names that you wanted to fight. You were never afraid to fight anybody. You looked for the very best. I mean, at one point, it looked like you were potentially going to fight James Pulver, who I think recently has gone on to be inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, or at least he's being talked about in that respect. You wanted to fight him. I mean, there's guys that fought in the UFC that you fought as well. Neil Seery, Paddy Houlihan. You know, you were fighting at a very elite level. You never shied away from anybody. And I think those guys that you fought speaks to the caliber of a fighter that you are. Um, so your resume is impressive. I just looked at it before I came on, and the caliber of people that you were fighting. You never ducked a fight. You wanted the best. Was that always intentional? I mean, was there ever a point where you, even with one fighter, that you felt like probably, you know, perhaps a standard above me, I'm not going to take that?
Oh, never, never. Like any of the fights, I'm not saying that I was definitely on that level by any means. No, but I'm saying I you had to believe that you were going to fight and you were going to win, or what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point in turning up? So yes, every fight I took, I fully expected to win. Obviously didn't go that way. Uh, on paper, would it have been like one of the largest disappointments in my career? No doubt would be to not have made it to uh, the UFC. Haven't got close at
Yeah.
several times. And just listen. To be honest, I dropped the ball whenever it mattered. And that's the long and short of it. In the fights that were pivotal to that decision, they were the fights that I lost, and uh, that's no one's fault, nobody's fault but my own.
And
And
how do you deal with losing? I mean, how much pressure do you put on yourself first and foremost to win? And when you don't win, how do you deal with that?
not well, you know. Uh, I don't like to lose, and in anything, and that's nearly the unfortunate part. You
Hmm.
know, uh, from a mindset perspective, I suppose what hurt me the most in those fights was I suppose because so much was on the line. The fact of the matter, I underperformed in the biggest fights in my career, and that's the simple matter of it. That's in no way taken away from the top level fighters
Yeah.
I fought and who beat me in those fights. Uh, but in all of them, I underperformed to a tremendous level, and that is something I have to sit with. And that is something that will sit with me and does sit with me. And the when you think of, I suppose, getting close at times, and then I would say in those fights there was a suffocating amount of pressure that uh, I didn't I didn't deal with as well as I should have, and that is what then ultimately cost me these fights. Uh, and that was, I suppose, something that I had to deal with my entire career. Like any of my coaches, or any of my coaches would tell you, I would have put a tremendous amount of pressure on myself. Winning was the only thing,
Hmm.
that was it. There was no, I'm going to go in here and get experience. I'm going to go in here and we'll see what happens. No, it was win or bust. You win or you go home, and that is it. And that's while many would say, "Oh, that's a good attitude to carry into sports," it is, but you have to be able to harness that and use it to your advantage. And there's times where I would definitely say that it got the better of me, and I then since underperformed massively because of said pressure. You know,
Hmm.
uh, do you make the right calls all the time? No, like as you say about my resume, I was very lucky to share the cage with boys who were top five in Europe their entire career. But they
Hmm.
are the fights I asked for. I
Yeah.
requested them. I wanted them. You know, could I have taken the easier route? Absolutely. You know, would the easier route have got me to the bigger shows? Most likely, yes, it would have. As in, there were periods when the UFC was coming to Ireland, and my management team had told me, listen, don't take these fights. Take 4 to 5 lower ranked fighters to get wins and get in. And I didn't do that. I said
Now,
no.
how would that have sat with you in hindsight, looking back? Would you have been comfortable that you ducked fights, or would that have always annoyed you?
The per se, when I was asking for these fights, it wouldn't have been that I was ducking them. I shouldn't have asked for those over others. It was more the fact they were trying to. I understand where they're coming from. They're saying to me, "Listen, take take fighters who are top 20, not top 10. Get wins over them. Get to the big show." Uh, my view, I suppose, was listen, if I can't beat a guy who's top five in Europe, I don't deserve to be in the UFC, you
Hmm.
know. And that was the view that I took. Was it right? Listen, you can. It's a story that you can go back and forth on. You can. Many would say it wasn't, in a sense that had it worked out, yes, it would have been right. But the fact that it didn't, and I suppose then I didn't get to fight in the pinnacle of the sport, um, then many would say no, you didn't make the right call. So I suppose it's quite subjective to each person.
That's what I wanted to ask is what's your measure of success at this time? Is the UFC that's success getting there, or looking back now, perhaps are you able to see success not having achieved that particular goal? Can you still look back at your career and say I was very successful?
If I'm being 100% honest, no, I don't. Now, don't get me wrong. I know, again, other people will disagree, and people will be very nice and you know very complimentary. Uh, but it's what, if you're being completely honest with yourself, no, I underperformed in my career, and did it go as well as I had hoped? No. Yes, what I like to hope that I've helped in the rise of in the north, and things like that, and especially in the local area. Yes, I would like to hope that I've played some part in that, which I suppose is something. But if I'm going to be critical of myself, yes, it would be. And I have to say, then it becomes then that it is harder to watch. Like, it's harder for me to watch fights now, being 100% honest. It's harder for me to watch top UFC fights, because that then brings up a lot of the memories that of, again, not to be massively self-critical, but if I'm being honest, my failures, and that's just me being completely transparent about how I feel about the whole situation.
Hmm. I mean, as a friend and having watched your career, everybody was immensely proud of what you were doing, and you know you you are being perhaps too hard on yourself. You know, um, I guess part of what I'm doing now is to look for people that have been an inspiration, and why I wanted to talk to you in particular is because you started MMA at a time when it wasn't in the mainstream. We're going back 20 years almost. Um, you were the first of a generation, or the first of a few people of that generation that started to pave a path for what is now a conventional sport. Everybody is aware of what MMA is, and certainly the UFC. Um, and that wouldn't have been an easy thing to do for you, because there wouldn't have been no blueprint or precedent set by other people for you to follow. But you've done that for them. So I think you could be proud of that for sure, that other people can see what you've done. You've also set up a gym, you know, uh, a training ground for new and upcoming fighters to you know play their trade and develop a certain skill set. And you probably don't see that of yourself, which is unfair, but you should know it.
No, you're correct. Listen, I really appreciate the compliments, and and if that's how people, if some people feel, and if people were able to draw a level of inspiration from that, fantastic. I'm very proud of that sense, and I'm aware that I may be, and many people say, slightly overcritical myself, but that's just the truth, and that's how transparent, you know I would be with it. And it's how I would sort of look at all sort of areas of sport that I'm involved in, between business, between, my fight career, world record attempts. These are things that, it's, win or lose. There is no gray area. It's very black and white. And that's sort of how I would view it.
So you've since turned your hand to business, and for a time, your MMA career and your business kind of ran parallel. You've started Right Fitness. I wanted to understand, when you started that business, what the vision was for it. What was the mission statement and how that's evolved. And how do you measure success in business? The sometimes criticism that you have of yourself, do you use that as a strength in business? Can that be, can you turn those negatives into positive, and does that help push you forward?
Oh, big time. I have to say now, yes, being harsh on yourself can be, probably a bit, uh, destructive. Many would think, as in, I would find, you know, me holding myself objective to these things means that I look at that as a strength that, I'll never get complacent, and I'll
You're being
always,
honest with yourself, I suppose,
yeah,
if you look at
I'm
it that
being
way.
as honest, I'm being as honest as I feel, and that then allows you to disregard complacency and really, really push things on. And in business, like, yes, I got into fitness because I was massively obviously involved in it myself.
Hmm.
And then took to that really, and was able to find myself helping people. And then as that sort of progressed, I was able to help more and more people in different fields, and I was able to get a massive level of gratification from that, as in like it was very satisfying to help people reach their fitness goals. And they're completely different to what mine are, and that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. It's very individual. Fitness is a very individual thing. Fitness and training and strength and physique and stuff, these are all very individual because they're different for each person. Each person's goals are different, and they don't need to be lofty goals. They don't need to be something that is absolutely huge. It has to be individual for that person. For some people, running or completing an Ironman, is a huge goal that they have. But for other people, you know, dropping 5 pounds in
yeah.
weight is a huge goal. And people think there's a massive gap between those two, but it's not. It's very individual to each person. So because of that, you're able to help a large scope of people then achieve the goals that are really important to them. And I found that very gratifying in business, and that really motivates me all the time. Like I'm very lucky to work in a profession where I love my job. I love
Hmm.
my job. I love getting up in the morning. I have no problems going into work. I never would think, oh God, I have to go into work here. No, I love getting up, motivated, happy, and the days just zipping, because you're working all the time. Listen, I'm in a very privileged position. Obviously, I'm working now with people that you have chose to work with, as in like
Yeah.
so, some of my clients have been with me for 12 or 14 years, and like so these people are very close friends of yours no matter what. And so outside of people very well, you've built these relationships, and I would have my retention rate's very high. So you're working with all of these people all of the time. So there's a large consistency there with the people you're working with. So you've seen them come from where they were to where they're moving to, and it's a massive, massive difference. And then you've developed this relationship and developed this trust and this loyalty and stuff like that. So you you're able to progress business in that sense, and that's the element of it I really love. And I'm always trying to evolve it. I'm always trying to evolve different areas of the business, and uh and really take it up in that sense. And I suppose success is based for me on people's uh people's progress primarily. You know what I mean? And not even that, I suppose. if it if I feel it benefits me, as in like there's certain areas of business that I could move into that you know financially would benefit me more than areas I work in, but they're just not for me. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And uh being being content and being happy in what you're doing every day was the primary focus for me, over
Yeah.
anything else. And if if taking on an element of business didn't didn't fit that, I dropped it. I went back to what I enjoyed doing primarily. And I'm at a stage now where thankfully I have a work schedule and timetable that really fits that. And because of that, then it's never an issue.
Hmm. Um, you've also have a family now. I mean, you have, I think, 4 kids,
4 kids, yeah.
and obviously your wife Lisa. Um, how do you manage all of that? Because like you're up essentially at the crack of dawn. You take boot camps from I think as early as what 6:30, 7 a.m.
Half five.
Yeah, okay. And then that continues throughout the day into I guess the evening. Plus, people should know that you also continually train yourself, and then there's family life. Um, where do you fit it all in?
Coffee helps. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, listen, don't get me wrong. It's a it's a very busy schedule all the time, but I love that. It's like I'm always going. Lisa will be the first one to tell you my personality doesn't deal well with downtime.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, so you know I would also, it fits it this lifestyle, this sort of what many would think is a hectic lifestyle, fits my personality. It's all very on the go. Like, not only Lisa, all the boys in the gym, all my coaches, all will tell you just it's that completely fits my personality.
hmm,
So, um, being productive is something that and going and working and doing these things all the time, it's no problem. Your day zips in from the minute you're up, then you're working straight away. You're working straight through. So like time I get up, I'd start my classes at 5:30, and then you're working through to coordinate, and then I've got privates then from, depending 8 o'clock in the morning to my first morning session, then I train. Then you've got privates again till your first afternoon session when I train again. And then you're home and I work to 7 o'clock every night, and 7 o'clock you come in and then it's see the kids, and it's bedtimes, all that, and then you get up and rinse and repeat. You go
yeah,
back to all the way up into Saturday. So it's like if uh, if anyone's looking where to find me from, I wouldn't be too hard to find.
yeah.
It's from 5:30 in the morning to then in the afternoon I go home and I'm lucky I do a lot of my afternoon sessions at the house. I have a facility out here. I do it out there. So between the house and the gym, between Monday at 5:30 to Saturday at 2 p.m. That's where you'll find me.
So
Uh,
tell me about the gym, and it's very much a facility that caters to many many different things. You know, I think it's called the compound gym.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Okay, tell me about that and what it makes available to people if they want to take up fitness, MMA. You know.
We'll lose myself and then would went into partnership with years ago with two of my coaches, Sean and Sebastian. Two of my coaches, two of my closest friends, uh, and the I run the fitness element of the business, and the boys run the martial arts.
Okay.
So fitness element, we do everything from personal training to group training programs. The martial arts, the boys run everything from uh, Thai boxing, boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, MMA, and there are beginner to pro programs and kids to adult.
And there's taekwondo available too. Is it Garth or Garth Kid?
Garth has since moved on to his own
Okay.
facility.
And how can people find, or what's the best way for someone if they wanted to take up any of the above? Where
Oh,
would
just
they?
drop in and chat to one of the coaches, and anyone would be more than happy to talk you through everything and fill you in on whatever schedule it is we're working for.
You touched upon the two boys. You've your two coaches, Sean and Sebastian. You've had a very close relationship with those guys for a long, long time. Sebastian, in particular, because as it relates to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, you just got your black belt. This was, I think, a 12-year journey.
Yeah, in and
Talk
around.
talk to me about the importance of that relationship and him helping to develop you to that point where you got your black belt. And then I want to understand MMA for you in particular. What has it added to your life in terms of value, discipline?
Well, touching on your first point there, like, yeah, Sebastian has been key to my development in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I wouldn't be anywhere in that sport without his expertise and knowledge. But like I say, one of my closest friends, but also my coach. You know what I mean? There's two very different relationships there.
Yeah.
And I have respect for both. And that's it. As in, you have while you're close friends, you also have to work together as a coach to student relationship as well, and I think we managed that very well. And yes, and he was instrumental, obviously, in my development in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and it was quite the journey and a really sort of pivotal point for me to finally get my black belt. Because I'd worked for it over the years, and you know, when many martial arts now, a lot of the gradings have been watered down massively. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is one of the ones that still holds its integrity because you have to essentially compete to get your black belt. So uh, there's still a massive amount of integrity based in that. So to get a black belt in that is a huge achievement. And that's that really, and but martial arts has, to put it quite simply, martial arts has changed the trajectory of my life, and that was it. Not changed it, has set it. And all of my children will practice martial arts. I believe everyone should get into a level of martial arts. The what it provides is, it's hard to describe.
Mhm.
From a young age, you have the social, the people are starting at all ages now, and which is key. But the the level of confidence people will build in developing a skill, which is essentially a self defense art, um, but also the social element involved with people in the gyms is tremendous. You'll develop a fitness and strength element from training martial arts. There are so many reasons, there are so many pros and zero negatives to training martial arts. I can't even begin to describe how much it would do for people's lives to get into a martial art, and the benefit it would have, not only not only from a competitive standpoint, which, listen, not everyone competes in martial arts. Like, there are
Yeah,
black belts in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu out there that don't compete in competition, but it still provides a tremendous aspect, both social, physical, and community based, in your life. And I think if I was putting any recommendation out to anyone, of which I do to all my clients, get your children into martial arts.
yeah. I wanted to just touch that. You talked about competitiveness, and not that everyone competes, but you are a competitive person. Having moved away from a competitive career in MMA, how do you fill that void, for want of a better word? How do you still remain competitive? Is it solely in business, or can you do that, you know, through exercise, MMA in some capacity, or how do you do that?
Yeah, well, like, I still need that. I need that drug, shall we say. I need
Hmm.
that competitive drug. I get in business, I'm very competitive in that sense. However, physically now, I would try and do it in different aspects. So, as in, the physically, I've moved into the last while, I have been attempting the world record in chin ups, for the most chin ups in 24 hours. I've been unsuccessful 4 times to date.
When was
Uh,
your first attempt?
First attempt was October 2020.
Okay, and that first experience, given what perhaps your expectations of that was, what were some of the learnings, having not achieved it? What did you come away with from that experience? Understanding the physical strain it's put on your body, the dedication required in training, and ultimately, what were the learnings from that experience that you've subsequently moved and pushed forward with?
Um, I suppose the one of the biggest ones was the mental aspect. I had always considered myself very mentally strong and thought this will be a big element of the challenge. And true, I thought it was going to be more than it was. I still hold myself up there mentally, but it was the physical aspect that really got to me. As in, like, mentally you can want and
Yeah,
will
yeah.
much as you want, but when your body gives up, when your body, as in, like, so unfortunately, the first one I ended up tearing my bicep. There was my want and will and desire to succeed couldn't be overridden by the physical aspect of the challenge. And that was, I suppose, I thought, yes, that was going to play such a big part. Unfortunately, the physical end was going to be obviously the biggest part of the challenge over the mental. Obviously, yes, you'll get to the end where you need the mentality to work through, and it's going to be a tough one. But there's elements where each time where I've gone, it's not been I've packed it in and quit. It's been your body has, given up to injury and or the likes, and that's unfortunately been the hardest thing to take, and that's where I suppose I need to go back and work elements more. That's
And
that's I suppose what I need to do.
in each subsequent attempt, the second, third, and fourth, did you make gains each time?
Uh, Not each time. There were different elements. So like but I had learned something more each time. Do you
Okay,
know? Uh, the the second attempt, I suppose. Sorry, no, the third attempt was the one where I was the most, I suppose, disappointed because I was really prepared. I'd made two massive, well, not too massive, I suppose, oversights. Two mistakes that I thought, right, okay, I'm ready for these now. And then I made the biggest oversight on my third attempt, unfortunately. Uh, did it in the summer. I really wasn't
okay.
prepared for the heat. It was the hottest day of the year, and I suffered extreme heat exhaustion. And I was most disappointed about that because of the fact I was so well prepared and trained. I really thought, yes, this is it. I've got this now. So that was pretty hard to stomach. Um, but the each thing is a learning experience, and each attempt was a learning experience, and you know it will take me back. But that allows me to maintain a level of competitiveness,
Mhm.
essentially, in the physical end, which I definitely need.
So how do you plan that? I mean, obviously there's a number that you're working towards in preparation. I mean, if I use marathon running for example, I think people talk about in preparation you never run that full distance. You only go so far. Maybe 20 miles, 21, and then you start to ease back off again. So, in preparing for the most chin ups in 24 hours, in training you're not going to go for the record, but how far do you go in preparation?
You see, that's a mixed bag because many would say differently. The most I'll go in training is 6 hours because the physical sort of negatives you will get from that, as in the knock-on effect, will affect your training. So if you're doing a 24-week training program for it, if you do 6 hours of chin-ups, you essentially lose a week of that. So
Okay.
it's trying to get the balance of maintaining your training to the highest degree possible without losing elements of your training from overdoing, if that makes sense. And again, you talked about blueprints before. There's definitely no blueprint for it. There's no one to
Yeah.
follow. So you're really just, I suppose, trying to do it yourself. But on the same note, this is something I find incredibly motivating because it's essentially it's a problem solving task, and I this is a problem that I need to solve, and I have failed 4 times, and this is where, but there is definitely a way to do it,
Okay.
as
And
the
you're going now into the fifth attempt, and I want to understand how you structure that 24 hours. Like, is there a point in the 24 hours that you make time for sleep? You know, um, in terms of optimizing nutrition, what are you eating? Um, how do you break down chin ups per minute, per hour?
uh, again, the what has previously been done by me has not been successful.
Okay,
So that needs to be reanalyzed. In terms of sleep, forget it. You have to go for 24 hours.
no
Uh,
way.
the level, the score has been beat now to the point where essentially it is, I'll work this out now, something along the lines of you need to be doing one chin up every 7 minutes for a day. you know. So as in or something possibly even more than that, because the record now is 7,447.
Okay,
So, uh, so it's been broken twice since my last failed attempt.
okay,
Um, so my structure has to change. Uh, I have been training different elements that I feel like I need to work on. Um, in terms of on the day, I'm very lucky to have a lot of support staff from a lot of people. Like I have a lot of people who are there to help. In terms of nutrition, very good friend of mine, Yannick McGee, is one of the top performance nutritionists in the country, and so I'm very lucky to have him to work my nutrition for me in the day, also in the build up to it. Any questions, any queries, any of the setups, uh, I have him to assist me and advise me and all of that. So that's priceless. Um, then the I suppose it's the setup and the dynamic really is something that needs to be worked. But I have a better idea now I know a timeline. Essentially, my next thing was I am not going to attempt it again until I have hit a certain figure. So as in like until I hit a figure that until I hit a certain amount in a 4 hour block, I am not at the pace to
Okay.
break. So, but this time now, I will be attempting the 8, 12, and the 24 hour.
Yeah, I think I've seen that. Okay. And
Simply for the fact,
from previous attempts, how far are you off the 8 and 12
well,
records?
that was why 8 and 12 I'd never gone for before, because 8 and 12 it's a scandalous number.
Okay.
The reason why I'd never done that is because I tried to slow my pace to go for the longer duration. However, the 24-hour number now is so high that in for a penny, in for a pound, you
Yeah.
know, I might as well just go for the 8 hour. The risk with going at such a high pace for the 8 hour is obviously injury, because you're going to have to
Yeah.
push at such a ridiculous pace to get. I think it averages out, so it's 3,751 for 8 hours. So you need to be hitting on average 468 per hour.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, you're hitting 468 per hour. So the risk of doing that to try and then hit the 24-hour, you're obviously maximizing your risk of injury, you know. So that was why I had never gone for that before. But because of the fact that the 24 hours is so high now, I'm like, right, this is it. So now I'm gonna attempt the 8 and 12 at the same time.
Okay. And is it likely to be this year that you're going to attempt this?
I would doubt now, at this
Okay.
stage now, we have to see, but in my head now, I am really gearing towards, I suppose, I had initially thought October, but uh, the way my numbers are progressing, thankfully, every week, but to the level that I need to be at, no, I don't think so. And until, like I say, this is it now. This is the last roll of the dice, so I am not doing it until I feel right. This is that I am really at the peak level of performance to attempt this. So until I am there, I'm not going to do it again because uh, I don't want to miss it again.
Okay. I want to understand comparative to other things that you've physically put yourself through and obviously mentally. I mean, you were an MMA fighter for 10 years, everything involved in that from training camps to cutting weight, which I kind of want to understand a little bit more about that too. Comparative to those experiences, how difficult is this relative or compared to what you've put yourself through before? Is this the hardest thing you've ever done?
I suppose things are subjective, really, because the fact that it had been so long. It's the latest thing I've ever done, and it was horrendous.
Okay.
Uh, but there was a lot of things were horrendous and very painful and very miserable in your MMA career as well. So, but it's up there. It's definitely up there.
Yeah. I'd I guess I'd talked to you before, and there's a quote that I took from you, and you had said sometimes you need to push yourself too far to understand how far you can go. You've always had that mentality, incredibly driven. You probably see challenges as something to overcome more so than perhaps something to stop you from doing something. How do you motivate yourself? I mean, you don't strike me wholly as someone that needs a podcast or a motivational video. You strike me as someone that is self motivating. Where do you get that motivation from? And is there other things that you supplement your motivation with?
Uh, well, I suppose what in terms of that, yes, I do need things to get you up, but as in to train. However, like the biggest quote you ever read, and it's very true, as in like, motivation is a terrible tool to use in that sense to, you know, in regards to doing things. Discipline is what you need in terms of finishing goals, finishing tasks, and working towards something. But, I suppose motivation wise, I'm not saying it's the most healthy way to do it. I would use, I suppose, a negative. People like to use positive motive. I would use more negative motivation to motivate me to do something. The fact that I would think, people think it can't be done, or people think I can't do it. I would draw a lot of motivation from that, and that worked very well for me. Me and my MMA career, fights where people really counted me out, really got me up, you know. And the same for this. I like to think of doing tasks that many would think completely insurmountable, and that really then gets me driven to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you've done it 4 times, but and I guess this speaks to your character because you're not someone that gives up having encountered defeat or failure. You're someone that I gather learns from it, and as dejected or frustrated as it might make you at that time, you push forward. And again, that speaks to your character. You are incredibly driven and ambitious, and that's part of the reason I wanted to talk to you in particular because you've demonstrated that throughout your life through MMA, now in business. I mean, you also put a book out there, a nutritional book, and now you're attempting a world record for the fifth time. Not enough that you've attempted it once, which is something that ordinary people like myself perhaps wouldn't even dream of. But do you see yourself as someone that sets not only lofty goals, but that they are very much achievable?
If if I didn't think I would achieve it, I wouldn't even attempt it. Because what's the point?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because I'd
Essentially,
seen a quote, and I don't know where I got it from, but it's essentially stop calling it a dream and start calling it a plan.
yeah, and well, like at the end of the day, how I would always view any of those things, as in like, is the why could someone else do it and not me?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, realistically, he's just a man like I am. He has two arms as well, and that's it. So I would look at something like that, like, why not? Why can he do, and that is something I've never been able to work to I suppose look past. All I would look at is like, why could he do it and I couldn't? So as in things like that I'm just always keeps my belief high, that obviously, yes, listen, the, there are figures that I'm off at the moment that I would need to get to, but you know, I firmly believe that I will get to them, or I would just scrap the whole thing.
Hmm.
Now many would think that's stupid and naive, and you know what? Possibly it is. I'm just again just being transparent of how I would think about those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how you take negatives and they effectively become positives in terms of the goals you set yourself. These are positive things that you're working towards, um, and you use that as a driving force. Yeah, very often people need that positive motivation to push them, whereas you take those negatives, spin them, and use it as a driving force to push forward. I want to understand what's next in terms of business. Again, you've set yourself that target, so I'll not ask you to take on anything else competitively. I think you've got enough on your plate. So, what's next for Damien Rooney? What's the
Uh,
future?
Business wise, I have just opened another sort of element to my online business, so I'm running a lot more personal plans now, because I found that I was able to, outside of working with people in person, I was able to then, I suppose, set people up on programs and work through them with it remotely. And I've just opened that element really to a higher degree, and it's thankfully doing very, very well. So I'm going to push forward now in that sense. Competitively, like I say, I have done or I'm attempting to build up into the world record, the chin up world record again. I have I've discussed there just only a few days ago with my coach about doing the Masters World Championships in Jiu Jitsu,
Okay.
the European and the World Championships next year, for my 40th. So I would like to do that, and unfortunately, albeit or all looking reading too much into it at the moment, I would imagine my application for gladiators has been rejected because it has been it's airing next month and I haven't heard anything as of yet. But the rejection there has left me, let's just say, very driven to prove their selectors wrong, break the world record, and try and get on episode or season two of Gladiators. So
Yeah.
that's suppose where we're at physically in those terms. First
Yeah.
off,
I'd seen on your Facebook. I was kind of looking on Facebook, and I'd seen that you'd submitted an application to Gladiators. I mean, first I wasn't aware that it was coming back, but I understand it is. Uh, and I mean, did you do it? Did you submit the application half in jest, or was like, I want to
no,
do this?
no,
Okay.
definitely. I I had applied when I was 17 for the first season, you
Okay.
know, and got turned down. And I was like, no, definitely, that really appeals to me. I am all over it. So selectors, if you're listening right now, you know what I mean. I'm coming for season two. You made the wrong call here, and that's it. So no, I just thought, see something like that. That is something that would really would just again the whole one to one competition element. Something, yes, I would be all over that.
Yeah. I mean, I, I thought about asking this question. It's probably not a question, just more of an observation, because in your professional life in MMA, in in business, you're very driven, very professional. You put that particular cap on, but most people that know you, there's the funny, there's the light-hearted, jovial, jokey Damien. Um, does that do you allow that personality to filter in to business in any shape or form, or do you need to keep the lines particularly clear?
Oh no, like with clients, I'm just the person I always am. Do you know what I mean? Like with people, I'm just the same person I always am. As you know, just a bit of a joker. Like, don't like to take it too seriously. In regards to business and professional end of things, I take it all very seriously. But in terms of like I say, a lot of my business is personal relationships. In terms of
Yeah,
that, they get exactly the gay that everybody sees all the time. You know what I mean? There's no there's no straight laced sort of stick up the ass, shall we say, Damien Rooney. That's very serious. No, that's just not me. You know.
that's why
So
I think it would be a great shame if Gladiators didn't put you in TV. I think we all deserve that to see
I'd love
you.
I'd
It
love to
sh-
I'd love to get on. I'd love no, but again, something like that, I'd be very serious. Because I would be going over to try to win. I'd be
yeah,
going over to win, and yeah, well, it would be I'd imagine great atmosphere and great crack and all to get on and to get in that show. I'd definitely be going over there to win it.
yeah.
Or
I
to
would
attempt to win it. Yes, obviously. Listen, that's neither here nor there. Listen, but it's the when I saw it come back out, I thought to myself, something like that would really motivate me. I'd love to get on that. That would excite me about getting up to go over and do something like that.
yeah. I'll keep knocking that door, man. I'm sure they can't ignore you. You've been trying since you were 17.
That's
Just
it,
keep
might as
going.
well. Listen, I need to. It has all worked out very well. If I break a world record, that would be another thing on the list that I suppose could entice them to do it. So it has motivated me even more than to break the world record, which should hopefully open another door. Who knows? Who knows?
So I want to ask then: is the world record the goal, or is gladiators? Is the world record a means to get the gladiators,
They're
or
both on the same path.
yeah? Um, I've enjoyed this, man, because if I'm honest, I seen you early on in your MMA career. I remember you had a printed copy of a book from Ken Shamrock, Inside the Lion's Den. you had it printed on A4 pages, and you give it to me. And that was my introduction, because at that point I didn't know what MMA was, never heard of it. And this is about the time season 1 of The Ultimate Fighter. We
Yeah,
watched it every Monday religiously, um, and ever since I've had a lifelong interest in MMA, and that's solely due to you, thankfully, because I thoroughly enjoy it. Um, I think you have been an inspiration. You were the first of a few people that paved a particular way. Now gyms are readily available. Kids can go and access MMA and all forms of mixed martial arts, or martial arts, in the singular. And you've been a big part of that, certainly in Newry. So you should be proud. You've done incredible things, and you've still remained that driven person. And I'm not surprised. I know your personality enough to know that um, you're ambitious, and you want to do big things. So
well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Fox. I really appreciate all the kind words and the compliments, and I take it all. It's very humbling when people say things like that. And listen, I don't. If any of it is true, then I take it very much as a massive compliment. So thank you.
no worries. One last thing. So say you make it to Gladiators, but not as a contestant, but as a gladiator. What would your name be?
Come on now, come on. Do we
Would
need
it
to
what
answer?
would it be the Rage?
It would have to be the Rage. You know what I mean? It would have to be. Come on, it's it always has been. It
And,
always
and,
has been.
and what would that tight fitting lycra costume look like?
I'm not gonna lie to you, it wouldn't be the thing I'd be looking forward to the most out of it, you know.
No.
But
Yeah.
exactly. But I don't think, to be honest, I don't think they're going to make a gladiator from someone who's in and around 11 stone soaking wet. So I doubt, unfortunately, that I'm going to make it to the gladiator. I'm thinking more of the contestant end of things.
Yeah. No
Yeah,
worries. Well, listen, I've really enjoyed this, Matt. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
brilliant. Thanks, Foxy.
Thanks, Damien.